The sign above read simply Second-Hand Thrift. A rather generic title in my opinion, and a strange place to hold a club, but I wasn't the one in charge, was I? No, Malcolm was in charge, and Malcolm was quite peculiar. The building was large, much the size of a warehouse, and the outside was a faded beige, quite similar in color to a worn-out pair of khakis. What was I doing here? You ready? A voice inquires from behind me. What? I respond, jolted from my surveillance. I said, are you ready? The voice of Cameron repeats. Ready as I'll ever be, I answer glumly. I am then led forward into the thrift store. A musty, dusty smell penetrates my nose unwarranted as I enter this place. People are browsing all throughout. Scavengers sifting through the wide selections of clothing separated into the three categories of men, women, and kids. Small children playing with the action figures once belonging to children, much like themselves. Others still relaxing in furniture priced at $10 that would be $70 anywhere else. Looking at these people, I again ask, what was I doing here? Jacob, this way. Cameron leads on. I follow him through the sea of people all the way to a back room surrounded by a dual-purpose glass. Mirror on the outside and yet clear glass on the inside. This I had already been told about. Cameron, who had been in front of me, looked to make sure no one was watching, then opened the door to this sectioned off room, and he and I quickly entered, Cameron shutting and locking the door behind us. There were three others already in the room. An aged, skinny man of average height sat in an armchair looking down at the faded pages of an old book, seemingly heavily involved with the piece, as he did not so much as raise his head an inch as we entered. A young man of light brown hair stood over by the left-hand wall, looking through the mirror at those that were shopping. Lastly, there was a skinny, middle-aged man over at a bar in the far back of the seemingly expansive room, pouring 5 drinks from what looked to be a wine bottle. This man had short, dark hair, oval glasses, and a mustache. This was, of course, Malcolm. Turning away from the bar, Malcolm looked to me and smiled. The mere fact that you stand here now in this room shows me that I made no mistake in inviting you here, Jacob. Please, take a seat. I did. Malcolm then picked up a small tray and brought the elderly gentleman, the man at the looking glass, Cameron, and myself each a dark, gray, long-stemmed glass filled with a crimson liquid. Malcolm then placed the tray back down at the bar and took the last glass for himself. There was no toast made, which seemed odd to me, but as I had stated, I was not in charge here. I took a drink of the liquid from the glass, which I, unlike the others, quickly pulled away from my lips. It was disgusting. The older gentleman with the book was the first one to make any comment. Quite interesting. French? No, Swedish, Malcolm answered. Sebastian, I believe, was his name, according to the documents I found on him. Malcolm walked over to one of the empty armchairs, scattered about the room, and took a seat. Then, sipping more from his glass, went on. He'd been on the same bus as I, had gotten off at the same location as me. I had followed him into a bathroom, and there I had, obtained the fine liquid which we are drinking now. This last bit had been said with a trace of laughter in his voice. Looking into my now 3/4 full glass, I saw that the liquid within was a much darker red than I had at first realized, and a shiver went down my spine as I realized it was not wine. What instrument had been used? Cameron asked, still standing near the door. A hammer, of course, Malcolm replied curtly. Oh, real original, Malcolm, the young man threw in, turning away from the looking glass. You've never used that before. Well, it's far more compact than the objects you used, David, Malcolm returned. Was your last one not a baseball bat? And did you not break it while using it on the woman in the fall? She nearly got away. Why wouldn't that have been embarrassing? At least my instruments of choice are more modern than those medieval pieces Nathan uses, David countered. Hey, I've explained my reasoning behind why I use what I use, the older gentleman stated, pulling his attention away from the book he was indulged in. Gentlemen, we mustn't bicker, especially when we have a possible new member among us. Malcolm waved his hand in my direction. Jacob, I'm terribly sorry. Rather than speak a word, I just continued sitting there, silently holding my glass. Again, the question surfaced in my mind. What was I doing here? What happened next, Malcolm? The old man inquired. Do go on. Nathan, you know full well all that followed. It was as always, Malcolm stated flatly, taking another sip of the crimson. True, I myself do know what happened afterwards, but one such as Jacob would not. Good point, Nathan. So anyway, after I had filled the bottle over on the counter, Malcolm nodded his head in the direction of the bar. I had, of course, gotten rid of the body. Where, I cannot say. Jacob, it is a rule here that the location where one disposes of a body must never be revealed, even to the other members of our club. That is the one piece which must remain a mystery. Other than the man's wallet, which is currently in my trophies safe. Oh, by the way, Jacob, you will receive one of those as well if you decide to join us. Anyway, as I was saying, besides the man's wallet, everything on that man's person had been completely destroyed. I then went to the address listed on his driver's license. Fortunately, he lived alone. I didn't particularly feel in the mood for killing a woman or a child at the time. At this, there were nods of empathy from the others. Looked all about, destroyed all photos belonging to the man. Then I called the club movers, and they will be bringing all the man's belongings here sometime tomorrow. You think those people out there realize what it is they're doing? The young man, David, asked, looking through the glass once again. They know they're buying pre-owned items, that's really all they need to know. Malcolm smiled again. Then he rose from his seat and went to the bar to refill his glass. Here's to Sebastian, because of whom we now have the exquisite beverage which resides within our glasses and also in our stomachs. Malcolm raised his glass slightly into the air, then downed its contents in a solitary swig. This was the point when I had had enough. I got to my feet and exclaimed, "What the hell is wrong with all of you?" To my surprise, the others merely stared at me as though this were expected. "Can you hear me?" I said, "What the hell is wrong with all of you?" Malcolm again smiled. "Your reaction is normal, Jacob. The others here had reacted likewise at first. Those here, and those you have yet to meet, were all patients of mine, as you are now. The same displacement, the same loneliness, and the same potential for murder I saw in all of these men, I have seen in you over the past few months. That is why I had invited you. And face it, that is why you had shown up tonight." My eyes had unexpectedly filled with water. I'm not like you people. I'm nothing like any of you. Talking about murder as though it were some kind of after-work hobby, drinking blood as if though it were wine, and selling the belongings of those you murdered to the public. It's everything you've ever dreamed of? Malcolm interjected. I could hold on no longer. I closed my eyes and let the tears run down my cheeks. Yes! Malcolm picked up the bottle of Sebastian's Crimson, walked over to me, filled my glass, smiled, and said, "Welcome to the club."